You're going to bring your knife. This plane of the knife is always going to be on the ribs. But we're just trying to skin them off the belly. Okay. And they go all the way back to about there. There's the last rib.
Yeah.
Yeah, no losing
Don't
bacon.
be taking any bacon.
Yeah. And they're tricky. It looks like you're going to go under them and pull them out. It looks like they end right here, but they don't actually end until down here. So don't come up with your knife until you're there. And the key is to just skin the ribs. And yeah, and the temptation is to pull up on them like this, but you end up pulling meat into the knife that way. So keep it down and keep the knife up against the ribs. That's the way to do it. Okay. And that guy will come right off. That's it.
That knife must be pretty sharp. It looks like butter.
He does sharpen it well. Yeah, it feels like butter, but
Does
he
it?
sharpens it quite a
He's
bit.
very meticulous with his knife sharpening. He has a little ritual and his two different stones that he uses.
Oh, really?
It's a Japanese whetstone and different kinds of stuff. He's very finicky about his knives.
It's the craft.
Yeah, he kind of learns. He learns stuff like really old school. He likes the carbon steel knives, which are a pain in the ass, but you can get a little bit better. Yeah, that's short. Yeah. This is
Oh, yeah. Do you feel like a master? It looks like you just know what you're
I
doing.
can't wait to do this again.
And it is. There's your spare ribs.
That is beautiful.
There's the belly. So this will all be bacon. Oh my gosh. So we'll solve this whole thing today.
Wow.
Is this what they cut off to make the St. Louis ribs?
Yep.
What's the St. Louis? Exactly what it is. There's the cut of ribs at this grocery store. You see the spare rib, and if they cut this one section off, then it's the St. Louis cut.
Yeah. These are the cartilaginous tips of the ribs. And they're flimsy. Same thing with pork. This will taste more porky, as long as you don't oversalt.
And we'll just taste.
And it'll just taste salty. Yeah. So I'm just cutting off this end so we can fit this nice and flat in there. This is the loin, you know, we're gonna put this in this will be bacon. This is how people used to make.
When it comes time for you to hang it,
Yeah.
poke a hole in it and string it.
Yeah. Yeah, I would poke 2 holes right here.
Get a 3-hole punch. With a really extra wide set.
So you just hang it open air, or do you put like a cheesecloth?
I hang it open air in my kitchen, and I always start these things in the colder months of the year, so I don't have any flies. And my kitchen is, well, I have 3 small children, so it's chaos all the time. But you know, that creates air movement. My sons are bouncing off the walls.
Your kids ever climb up and taking a chunk off it?
No, but they ask for it all the time. Kids love cured pork. I love it. My 3-year-old asks for shuti all the time. It means prosciutto. They love it. My other son is incapable of conceiving of the insanity that it would take to actually stop moving and just eat. So he doesn't ever ask for food.
Right.
It's inconceivable.
Have to be forced down his
Do that this time. But it's so stable. I mean, it's great for like camping. If you're going off backpacking, bring some prosciutto. I mean, it'll just keep. It really doesn't spoil. Bring cheese.
Make your friend carry the bow
Yeah. Bring guanciale is a good thing to bring. You know, cheap. It's very packable. The other thing that might happen is if you're hanging in a place where there's lots of light, the fat will start to oxidize a little bit. Even on a saturated fat pig, it'll get a little yellow. But that doesn't bother me. I think a little rancidity is kind of nice. It tastes kind of good. And for me, you know, I hang it in my kitchen where there's windows and lots of sunlight, but having it accessible is it's worth it to me. I want it to be where we'll use it. Yeah. Yeah, we'll trim off any flaps and any bloody bits.
So if you didn't have the rind, you would run the risk of over salting.
Yeah.
Kind of like this.
Yeah, I think so. I've never actually salted without the rind before. I don't know. But that makes sense. Because salt doesn't stick to the rind, it's much less permeable. And there you can see we're getting lots of water coming off the meat already. You can see how it wouldn't. No, yeah, it's still pretty nice. Pork chops make sense with things like this. Everything makes sense with things like this. So this is one way. There's another way to kind of manage water inside of meat, and that's brining. And that's just dissolving this in cider or water, maybe also dissolving some sugar or honey in there, and submerging the piece in that brine. And you can keep things in the brine like you would keep them in your refrigerator. If it's more salty, things will keep longer in your brine, and those get saltier and saltier and absorb more of that flavor. Because brine, again, in that environment, there's an immediate exchange. Salt is immediately going into the meat. So anything you put in the brine is pretty certainly going to be salty, unless you really time how long it's in there and you pull it out before it gets real salty. And you can take it out, dry it, and I like to cold smoke things in brines because that dries them off a lot, and then you can hang it again. If you were just to take it out, sopping wet from the brine and just hang it without the drying, cold smoking step, it would be a little moist and it would probably attract flies. You might get molds and it might spoil. So you'd want to do something to enhance that drying. And cold smoking, by the way, does not have to be a complex operation. It's a very simple thing. I like to use a real actual source of burning wood because that dehydrates air, you know, it pulls moisture out of the air. You guys don't have to worry about that here. But, and then I do it with a Weber barbecue, a cheap one, you know, just a little egg-shaped thing. And I pull all the grills out, and I put hardwood in there, and I ignite it, and I put the lid on cracked, and then I hang my meat from my eave in my house. And the smoke just goes up to the meat. That's it. It's just smoke wafting on meat. It's all cold smoking is. And it works really well. It's so easy. And it usually takes a couple afternoons. If I were to sit there all day and, you know, keep the fire going, then it would probably take just a day to get a nice golden smoke on it. But it does not have to be in an expensive chamber or anything like that. What I actually prefer a more drafty smoking environment because we're not adding nitrate or nitrite to this. Well, we probably are adding nitrate, but not trite. You don't want to have an anaerobic environment, which a smoker can be. It can be an oxygen-free environment. If it's totally sealed, you shut the door and then you fill it with smoke, chances are there's not going to be any oxygen in there. So if there is a risk of some nasty botulism toxins being released, at any point in the dry curing stage, it would happen in a cold smoker that's airtight. So that's why I like to have it drafty. You just need some slats, oxygen escape.
What about the hanging the meat year round?
We saw a video on YouTube for people back in like Virginia, places with higher humidity,
Yes.
and the chinks in their smokehouses were this big, and then they would rub the hot pepper on the outside, and even though they had flies that I don't remember if they said that the flies actually got to the meat, but that it didn't matter, or that it was, but they used like cayenne pepper, hot pepper, and used that as a rub on the outside, and then put the cheesecloth over it. I don't remember which came first, or maybe larded the cheesecloth and put the spice on it, but I mean, they were letting bugs get in and out to the meat, but it didn't matter. It was so drafty, it was drying out, and that pepper kept the flies off.
Yeah, pepper really helps. Sometimes what I do if I'm hanging something in the middle of July, which sometimes happens, you gotta freshly grind some black pepper so it's really strong, and just press that into the surface of the meat and then hang it. But yeah, big slats, and I think that would be in Texas, wherever Dan is, we were talking about that. The slatted, airy smokehouses are really essential, particularly in humid environments because it's humid, but the smoke dries out the air. So that's one way you can cure pork. So pretty much everything is smoked in the South, to varying degrees, because that's just where you keep curing meat, is in the smokehouse. That's where it lives, to deal with that kind of humidity.
If you have a really, really thick piece of meat, how do you know that it is dry all the way through?
Yeah, you'll feel it. This is pretty squishy. This is the thickest piece of meat we're going to cure. And it's still got some flop to it. You can see that texture. And it firms up significantly, even more firm than this fat. You'll know. Worst case scenario, you oversalt it. And that's really not that bad. I mean, the likelihood that it will spoil on you is extremely distant. It would have to be bacterial. And you'd have to do a lot to enable bacteria to destroy this. Because again, the bacteria is not just living in the flesh, it's on the surface of what we've touched, so it would have to come from the outside in to destroy it. If you've got salt on it and it's in a cool area, the likelihood of that is extremely minimal.
Do you ever mark
Yeah.
after it's cured with salt?
Yeah, so with the leg, being on the salt, pulling water out when it's nice and rigid, after hanging for a day, I take a spatula and that leaf water, and you just plaster the leaf fat on. Yeah, and the rest, and that's just on the meat exposed surface. The rest of it is covered by skin, so it's going to retard the retreat of water just ambiently as it's hanging. And putting that cap on makes it so it doesn't dry out too quickly here either. Because especially with prosciutto, with a dry cured ham, you want to slow everything down. You want to take it right to the line of putrefaction. That's because that's where good is. That's where deliciousness is. And that's where cheese flavors are. But that's a skill you acquire the more you do this. My goal with each piece that I salt for my home is less and less salt, less and less time on the salt. Just enough to make it stable and dry, but so that it can go somewhere. I want the cheesiness. And so when I hang it up and I start to get molds, or if I get molds already in the tub, then that's a good sign.
Nowadays, yeah, it's like it wasn't even cured.
Exactly.
Because there's really nothing there. I mean, I cook it and it's so thin, and it's just a little ribbon of meat, and then any of the white just turn to water and disappears, and it just doesn't taste good.
Yeah, that's definitely the unsaturated thing and the process. So if it has an expiration date on it, or it says refrigerate or freeze, it is not bacon. It's not cured. It's not preserved. It's just flavored.
So it's kind of like spoilage.
Yeah.
Oh, fish is
Right.
great.
The more difficult
Fish is amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. People do this with fish all over the world. Before refrigeration, this is how we built fall meat. We got a side of beef recently. It was so awesome. It was a Dexter cow, but it was actually a dwarf Dexter. So it was a small cow. She was the size of a large pig. And, but she was obese. She thrived on pasture so well that she got very fat. She was not grain fed or anything. And we cured her entire side just like this. And it was so good. I thought if you just dried out beef that it would become jerky. Not that entertaining, not that great. It would just be dry jerky flavor. Not the case at all. It turns into like cashews browned in butter. It's unbelievable. It is milky. It tastes more like beef than beef. And that's the same